Hello everyone, back tuning into today's video. We're going to have a look at the weather for the next week to 10 days for today's video. That's going to take us to around the 8th of April, and we'll be able to extend out beyond that with the extended GFS and ECM Ensembles. We'll also have a look at the Beijing Climate Centre for the next 40 days, and that's going to cover, can you believe, the period going right way into the beginning of May. But we're going to start off with this video having a look at the Arctic and North Atlantic oscillations. So the black line here tells us where we've been with the AO, the red lines at the end where the GFS Ensembles are forecasting the Arctic oscillation to go. Remember, it's just an index that's reflecting the state of the atmosphere. It's not driving anything, it just tells you what the atmosphere is doing. When the Arctic oscillation is in its positive phase, you're going to have low pressure up over the pole. You have low pressure over the Arctic, and you'll typically strengthen the westerly zonal flow. So you'll tend to have low pressure around Iceland and high pressure through the Azores. So we see that at the moment we are in a very positive phase of the Arctic oscillation. That's where we are right now. We're on the positive side with the AO. We have been since going back into February. GFS Ensembles are going to keep our forecasters to stay positive for the next few days. But then to go through to the beginning of April, it does look as though the Arctic oscillation is dropping negative once again. So the last period of negativity of the Arctic oscillation was back in January. Looks as though the trend is very much towards negativity of the AO as we go into the early part of April. So we might start to see some high pressure getting going up over the pole again, and that's going to try probably to force colder air out of the pole. But the barrier to that is what's happening in the North Atlantic. So this is the NAO observed and forecast chart. Again, it's the same idea. The black line here tells where we've been with the North Atlantic oscillation. The red line's at the end where the GFS Ensembles are forecasting the NAO to go. We've been in an extremely prolonged positive phase of the North Atlantic oscillation. Have to go right way back to autumn last year to find any extended period of negativity of the NAO. We're very positive with the NAO right now. We're just there, and you can see that the GFS Ensembles are forecasting the NAO to stay very positive as well. So this has been ongoing through the winter. We have had a very positive NAO throughout the whole of the winter, and it's going on now well into the spring. Eventually it will shift, eventually it will have to shift, but there's no sign of that happening in the foreseeable future, taking us certainly into the early part of April. So the indexes look like they're going to start moving out of sync again. We had quite a bit of this through the winter, of course, when through the early and middle part of winter anyway, the AO, the Arctic oscillation, was generally trending more negative, but the NAO was consistently trending positive. It looks like it might be going back to that a little bit as we go into April, which probably explains the model confusion that we've been seeing within the model output for April, why it's been such a confused picture. And just a couple of days ago we was forecasting to bring down a really cold northerly wind next week. That's kind of like been pushed back a lot within the model output, particularly within the GFS. Has pulled back on that a lot, and I think the reason that's happening, is down to the fact that the NAO and the AO are out of sync, or are being forecast to go out of sync with one another. Remember, these are not driving anything, they're just indexes that show what the atmosphere is doing. So when the NAO is positive, again, you're strengthening the westerly flow through the Atlantic, really. You'll have low pressure around Iceland, you'll have a strengthened area of high pressure through the Azores, and the contrasting temperature between the two, and contrasting pressure between the two, will strengthen the westerly flow. So a positive NAO goes against a cold signal, particularly in winter, so kind of like a mild signal in winter, whereas a negative AO, that's trying to push cold air out of the pole. So there's a fight going on here within the atmosphere as we move into April, and I think that explains at least some of the model confusion that we've been seeing over the past week or two for April. This has got a reflection of that. So these are the 500 millibar height anomaly flowcharts from Penn State University. We've got the ECMWF on the top. The GFS, which we'll have a look at in a moment, is on the bottom. But I can tell you they are very, very different in the week to 10 day time frame. So these are the mean flowcharts for days 7 to 10 or days 8 to 10. And red is extrapolating to above average heights, which is high pressure. Blue to below average heights, which is low pressure. Now, look where the ECMWF has the ridge in the 7 to 10 day time frame. It has it up over northern parts of Scandinavia. So that's a blocking signal there. And we've got the below average heights to our south and southeast. So it's a block pattern. The jet stream's going down there, going to our south. So we go onto the cold side of a jet. And we're trying to pull cold air from the north into the UK on the ECMWF solution. It looks quite cold and quite unsettled, therefore, in around a week to 10 days' time. But look at the GFS. Look how different it is. So in the 7 to 10 day time frame, the GFS has low pressure to our north. And instead of the high pressure being over Scandinavia, the high pressure this time is kind of like centred to our south. So it's more or less around the Bay of Biscay, northern parts of Spain, and into southern France, and also out into the Atlantic. And of course, that means we've got the westerly flow coming across the Atlantic with jet stream and rising to our north. So that's a dry, a mild pattern. A totally different pattern between these two models in just the 7 to 10 day time frame, and this does show, again, it highlights the confusion that we've got going on within the model output for this early part of April. Really is a very, very confused picture indeed. Further highlighted by the GFS upper air temperature and precipitation ensembles. So we're looking at Edgware today down in London. The red line here is the 30-year upper air temperature average for Edgware. So no problems where we start off at. Perfect agreement for the next couple of days. Going to be significantly milder than average. Over the weekend, we're going to get a drop in the temperature taking place. So it goes a little bit cooler over weekend and into start of next week. But then it's really through next week and beyond that we just have so much uncertainty. Look at the scatter that we have there. It's very, very difficult from around sort of 3rd, 4th, 5th of April onwards. Very difficult to get much sense out of this, to be honest. So again, remember the red line is a 30-year temperature average. So I think the majority of the GFS ensemble members, certainly through the middle and second half next week, are above average. That's where the majority is, and we know that from the white line here. That's the ensemble mean. So we know that the majority of these ensemble members through next week actually turn things milder. But we have these ensemble members down here that are actually quite cold. Some going impressively cold, I have to say, for early April, going down below sort of -10 at 850 HPA. And the scatter then just gets more extreme, really, as we go through the rest of the first week and into the second week of April. So we've got these members just here. They're cold ensemble members, obviously. These are actually very warm. They'd be lifting temperatures probably into the mid-20s Celsius, these warmest ensemble members. And from the warmest to the coldest ensemble members, warmest being that one there, coldest probably being that one down there. I mean, it's kind of like going from -12 up to +12. So there's kind of like a 20-degree temperature differential between the warmest and coldest ensemble members through this first week and into second week of April. So it is a very, very confused picture. Obviously, you can see that, just how confusing this is at the moment. I think we do say that the majority of these ensemble members, however, are on the milder than average side. Certainly through the middle and second half of next week, it looks to me as though we'll have a chilly start to next week. Then it'll warm up, probably keeping high pressure dominating. But then where we go beyond that, I think that is very much up in the air, if you pardon the pun, at the moment. Temperature anomalies from the 28th of March to the 5th of April coming out very close to average, so not a big deviation either way. Precipitation anomalies continue to be very dry from the 28th of March through to the 5th of April. This is how the operational GFS run is looking. We're looking at starting on Sunday, first of all. So a lot of dry weather on Sunday through the weekend. Will be cooler though. We will lower the temperature through the weekend, but still under high pressure. And that high pressure lasts into the early part of next week as well. This is a period when a couple of days ago it looked like we was going to get a proper northerly shot. Now we just keep this high pressure centre very, very close to the UK. That northerly shot is pushed over towards Scandinavia into central parts of Europe. That's where the cold northerly winds are going. We remain under this ridge of high pressure, so relatively dry. And after chilly starts next week, probably starting to get milder again as this high pressure just continues to sit very close to the country. We're up to day 10 and a weakening of the high pressure is taking place then. Low pressure is trying to force its way in from the north and west, but doesn't really come to anything. We saw that on the height anomaly flow chart, that basically the GFS wants to keep this high pressure close to us and wants to keep the jet stream running through to our north. Right at the very end of the 6 o'clock GFS run, pattern does change a little bit and we start trying to pull down some colder air from the north, but essentially high pressure is in control here with this GFS run for the next couple of weeks, and temperatures probably remain relatively mild overall with a few colder days mixed in. The main story though is high pressure dominates, so it's pretty dry. The parallel GFS run, again, we have this high pressure extending through the country at the weekend, but it will be within a cooler air mass. Now we get a little bit more of that northerly wind early next week with the parallel GFS. So this is only Tuesday. This is Tuesday the 2nd of April. It's only a few days away. And already, even at that point, there is uncertainty about how much of this northerly wind we actually get. So the parallel run does bring us into that northerly wind a little bit more. So the parallel is colder for the early part of next week compared to the GFS operational run. Through the second half of next week, looks quite cool and unsettled with the parallel GFS, so it's rather different, I have to say. Quite big differences really for next week, even between the GFS operational and parallel runs. That's how we're looking at day 10, which is the 7th of April. Rather cool, rather unsettled. I have to say I have noticed with the parallel GFS that it seems to often be going for a colder and more unsettled solution compared to the GFS operational run. Very often these colder and more unsettled solutions do not verify. So I think there's a bit of a problem with the parallel GFS. I'm saying this, it will probably be that the parallel will come out correctly for next week. We'll have the right solution for next week. But overall, I have noticed since I've been running the parallel GFS from the final stages of last year, that it seems to be that the parallel is often going for a colder and more unsettled solution compared to the operational, and those colder and more unsettled solutions tend not to verify all that much. So whether there's a problem here within the parallel GFS, and that's the reason they are delaying the parallel becoming the operational, whether there are things they've got to iron out with this version of the this latest version of the GFS model, I'm not sure. But that's just my observations. Whether the stats agree with that, though, I don't know. But that's just what I've kind of like observed as we've been doing these videos over the past few months, that the parallel GFS very, very often seems to be going for a colder, more unsettled solution. A little bit beyond day 10, we start to pull in some colder easterly winds then, and we start to build high pressure up over Scandinavia. So we finish up looking like that, rather cool, rather unsettled, even up to the 13th of April with the parallel GFS. But it does look very different, I have to say, to what the GFS operational is showing. And then we've got the ECMWF, and we know from the 500 millibar height anomaly flowcharts that this is going to be a very different solution to the GFS operational run as well. So again, we're starting on Sunday. High pressure is centred close to the country on Sunday, but the air mass will be somewhat cooler. Through next week, we pick up more of a northerly wind compared to both GFS operational and parallel runs. That is a proper northerly wind the ECM is going for through the middle of next week. So uncertainty from as early as around Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday as to how much of a northerly we're going to pick up. And then in the second half of next week, again, we build this high pressure up over Scandinavia, turning winds into the east with low pressure just to our southeast. that could bring some dismally cold and wet weather actually to southern and eastern parts of the country in the second half of next week. And that's how we finish up with the ECM operational run. So low pressure is just very close to the country. There'll be showers or longer spells of rain revolving around that area of low pressure. Probably turning milder as well, because it's starting to pull the winds up from the south. So after those cold east-northeasterly winds in the second half of next week, by sort of weekend of 6th, 7th of April, we're actually starting to pull up some milder winds from a southerly direction. But again, it does highlight how much uncertainty there is within the model output. These are the options that are on the table within the ECM Ensembles for day 10 via the postage stamps at the Icelandic Met Office. This is for the 7th of April. It's 240 hours away. So I've got 19 members of the ECM Ensembles with low pressure almost over top of the country. It includes that operational ECM run as well. So very unsettled with those, and probably bring wind up from a southerly southwesterly direction, so probably relatively mild. 15 with low pressure to the west and south of the country, more of an influence from high pressure over Scandinavia. They're bringing winds either from an east or southeasterly direction. There's 10 with low pressure to the north of the UK, so they're bringing in westerlies, very unsettled again. And then there's 7 that are kind of like sliding with the operational GFS. So these ones have the low pressure up to the north, high pressure is centred to our south, and they're bringing in a flat sort of westerly flow, rather like that. They're drier and milder, those options. 2 weeks time, these again are the options that we've got in the ECM Ensembles. This is for the 12th of April, 360 hours away. So we've got 31 members of the ECM Ensembles that have high pressure over Scandinavia, and they have the winds in from the east. So they're settling down, they're drying out, probably not overly mild. These are the mildest solutions, these 20 here, with high pressure generally centred just to our west-southwest, low pressures up to the north, and they're bringing in a westerly flow. I think they'd be generally on the mild side and pretty dry. Does look as though the ECM Ensembles are still trending towards high pressure returning, again, as we get through to the second week of April, after potentially a more unsettled start. Finally, we'll just have a look at Beijing Climate Centre for the next 40 days. So these are 500 millibar heights broken down into weekly, into 10-day periods, I should say. The first 10-day period is for the 1st through to the 10th of April, with above average heights to our west-southwest, below average heights are to our north. Up here, they're bringing in a flat westerly flow. So most unsettled conditions would be in the north, driest conditions would be in the southwest. We'll all be relatively unsettled though with that solution. Then the next 10-day period takes us from the 11th to the 20th of April. Above average heights then starting to build very close to the country. Below average heights are being pushed further north. Jet streams going north as well. So that's settling things down, turning generally dry and quite mild through the middle phase of April. The next 10-day period has high pressure over and to the east of the country, with low pressure out to the northwest, a jet stream pushed off up there. So that could be really quite pleasant. That could be mainly dry and pretty warm as well as we go through to the final 10 days of April. Very anticyclonic signals. If this is right, we're looking at another relatively warm and dry month coming up. And that high pressure signal just strengthens into early May. So the final 10-day period, days 31 to 40, is from the 1st to the 10th of May, with above average heights strengthening close to the country, a very strong anticyclonic signal. Below average heights are penned in towards the south of Greenland by then. Jet streams off up there. So again, you would expect mainly dry, quite warm, potentially even slightly hot conditions maybe through the early part of May. If that came off, obviously that's a big if. These long-range models are always prone to chopping and changing. But certainly signals for a relatively dry and warm April here after a relatively unsettled start perhaps. So that's all experimental. Coming back to the next week to 10 days though, there is so much uncertainty that we can't really look beyond that, I have to say. And uncertainty is creeping in from as early as around Tuesday or Wednesday next week. So how much of that northerly shot are we actually going to get through the early part of next week? That's our first question. Then after that, just what happens? Do we build the high pressure back in, settle things down and warm things up again? Or do we go into a spell of cooler and more unsettled conditions as we run up towards day 10? And of course, beyond that, so many questions that we really can't sort of answer those questions about where we're going into the second half of April. Again, into the second week of April, I should say. Again, I think a lot of this uncertainty is being caused by the fight, the atmospheric fight that is going on between what's going to happen in the Arctic, where we're going to start to pick up higher pressure over the pole, and what's happening in the Atlantic, where we still continue to have this signal for a strengthened Azores high. So it'll sort itself out over the next few days. We'll keep you updated. Obviously, tomorrow we've got JMA Friday, your month-ahead look at with the Japanese and CFS V2 models. We'll also have another look at the weather for the next week to 10 days tomorrow as well. And we may look at the stratosphere as well. I haven't looked at that for a few days, so we'll see what's going on with the stratospheric temperatures over the North Pole tomorrow as well, I think. Right, that's all for now, though, and thanks for watching.